think it's really important for artists, especially at a young age, to nurture those gifts. And if you're feeling that kind of desire, like, oh, I need to write something and it needs to get out. I look back, so much of the writing that I love that I've done was done at a really young age. And I just think to myself, well, if I never took the time to actually hear that voice and clarify and refine that part of myself, some of these things wouldn't have gotten written. So I think I love that term, emotional greenhouse, like really creating this cushion or space around you as a creative.
Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host, Jason English. You can find Curious Goldfish in all the major podcast and social media platforms. And of course, we have all of our content on our website, curiousgoldfish.com. Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a music podcast about more than music. I'm your host, Jason English. My guest today is Anna May. She's a singer-songwriter who's lived in about 7 different places and finally landed in Los Angeles. In her Instagram bio, she says she holds a PhD in breakup songs. And last year, she released a 4-part series to earn it. Some artists spend years deciding what kind of writer they want to be. Anna decided at 15, when she left school to do it her own way. You can hear it in the first minute of this conversation. She called in from the shadows of the redwoods in Northern California, and we get into where home actually is, why her songs run long, and why she plans to protect her creativity in a world of limited attention spans, algorithms, and AI. So now from Los Angeles, California, here's Anna May. Let's dive in. Anna, so nice to meet you finally. How's it going?
Jason, it's great. How are you?
Good. So not surprisingly, you're outside. This is totally on brand for you. Where are you calling in from?
This is perfectly on brand. So I'm calling in from Mill Valley, California, up in Northern California. This is my dad's hometown, and I still have a lot of family here. So I am up here today.
I guess let's start kind of on that topic. So one of the questions I had for you was just given your background and everywhere you've lived, I don't know, 6 or 7 different spots like New Orleans and Colorado and LA and Argentina. I guess I know home is LA, I think now, but like where is home actually for you if you had to say?
That's a really good question. I've lived in a lot of places. Right now, LA is feeling like the most home, and it's a place I never thought I would find a home or a community or anything like that. But right now, that really does feel home. I was born on the East Coast. I grew up in Connecticut, like a coastal town, very small town. And I honestly never felt like that was my home. And that's why I kind of did a lot of traveling. Colorado was the first place that I lived. I did like a writing immersion there when I was 18. And then just kind of got like the travel writer bug after that and moved to New Orleans. I lived there for about a year. Most of the places that I've lived have been attached to like a relationship or something like that. It's been very cool. It's been unintentional. I never expected to kind of be so itinerant in my life, especially into my 30s, but I'm kind of embracing it. So,
has there been a specific spot that's influenced your songwriting the most?
I would say, honestly, Northern California is a big one. If I look at a lot of my songs, they're inspired by nature. And my song Detach, which is one of my favorites, really resonates with the Bay Area. I think this place just really represents like a lot of awakening and a sense of coming back to myself, a sense of like true identity. And I would say that I think there are hints of New Orleans also in my music that's kind of more jazz flavor. I think when once I moved to New Orleans, I really learned how to inject jazz into the folk music that I was doing. So I always kind of think, between those two, like New Orleans and the Bay Area are really resonant spots for me in my songwriting.
Well, one song I wanted to ask about is, and I think you've said it's mostly a metaphor, but Speaking of nature, it's called Fireflies in Buffalo. So I know at one point there was a lot of buffalo in Colorado, probably not so much in Mill Valley, but I think is the buffalo is in reference to a past relationship,
It is a
right?
reference to a past
Yep.
relationship, yeah, and, what's cool about that song is that, obviously, like, some people who know me know what the song is about and what that reference is, and it's kind of funny if you know the reference and more interesting, but I think you can also listen to that song without knowing the backstory and kind of have it take on this, like, fantastical sort of life of its own. Yeah, I think, the way I look at it, the buffalo is kind of this very, like, weighted, sort of close to the ground, anchored, um, image or persona, and, the firefly kind of represents, like, the levity, the transience. And the song is really about the 2 of those colliding and seeing their misadventures, basically.
The line I love is says, maybe I'm letting go in the shadow of a buffalo. I see fireflies and the heartache of their afterglow. So I know on your Instagram profile, you basically, I think, are calling yourself having a PhD in breakup songs. So is this a good example of one of those
Yeah.
breakup songs?
It's a
Yeah.
breakup song, yeah. It's a four-part series. I released 4 singles last year, after a really horrible, unexpected breakup. And honestly, I look back at it and I'm like, those songs just really are things that I really cradle now and are so part of my, like, artistic identity, so I kind of feel like, well, it was sort of meant to happen, but yeah, that is a breakup song. The extended version is, like, 11 minutes long. I wrote that in Connecticut. I was back there, I think I wrote it, like, last July, um, and it was a very, like, quintessential East Coast summer, like, humid night kind of moment, and, I just remember I loved the experience of writing that song. That's one of my favorite writing experiences because it just came out. There was no, contriving, it just really happened and the lyrics happened, and I'm just so grateful for that, so.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned it because I was like, okay, do I ask her or do I not ask her? You mentioned the extended version is 11 minutes. I mean, you have a lot of songs that are kind of long, not really suitable for like the 3 minute radio play. They're
Yeah,
it's almost like more poetry than anything, right?
a little bit. Yeah, I love poetry, and that was kind of, the first venture into writing that I ever had was poetry. I listened to a lot of jazz growing up. My grandparents would go out to jazz like 2 or 3 times a week. So I was just growing up in these jazz clubs in Connecticut and, being a kid and hearing all this music that would really go on like seemingly forever. And I think that really stuck with me when I started to write my own music. I'm a lyricist, so obviously there's no space for like a saxophone solo or a bass solo or whatever. But um, I just kept thinking maybe I can do this jazz sort of format with folk music and maybe I can bring these genres together in a new way. And I also listen to a lot of jazz bands, like or not jazz, sorry, jam bands, jazz and jam bands in my early 20s. I would, go to festivals, fish concerts, and things like that. And I think I've just always been drawn to that kind of like never ending thing because that's when the real beauty happens in songs, the improvisation, and just really being able to play with songs. And you don't always
Yeah.
get that in the 3-minute mark. So.
You've done a fair number of interviews that, so I'm not going to rehash everything, but when you were 15, you did this unschooling adventure, which was sort of like a non-traditional way to educate yourself and get educated in nature. Hence, on being on brand here in Mill Valley, underneath the redwoods. But I guess in terms of it just seems like you've built an emotional greenhouse
Well,
around you, kind of around yourself. Is that just who you are, or do you think that more of a representation of a phase?
oh, that's a good question. I think it is who I am. The unschooling kind of came about. Yeah, I was in public school and I did really well in school, and I just always really wanted to write. I was writing just copious amounts of things, whether it was like I wrote my own script for like a Seinfeld episode and an Office episode and things like that. And I really was doing just a lot of my own creative stuff. I think it's really important for artists, especially at a young age, to nurture those gifts. And if you're feeling that kind of desire, like, oh, I need to write something and it needs to get out. I look back, so much of the writing that I love that I've done was done at a really young age. And I just think to myself, well, if I never kind of like took the time to actually hear that voice and clarify and refine that part of myself, some of these things wouldn't have gotten written. So I think I love that term. Yeah, emotional greenhouse, like really creating this cushion or space around you as a creative at a young moment. And I think that was what I did, like really learn deciding that I didn't feel that public school was the right fit at that moment. And yeah, I just, being out in nature, being able to travel, being able to write, kind of taking a risk, I think risk is really important to the creative life, and being in uncomfortable situations forces you to write some of your best work, because you're in a situation that is not lending itself to comfort or stability. I think that's really important for artists, and I know it has been for me. So that's a
So
long-winded answer to that question. I think it kind of answers it. I kind of like took steps early on to just protect like the creative instincts that really, for me anyway, felt were getting kind of battered and like muted in the public school setting, and I knew I had to take myself out of it and, like, listen to Miles Davis and read Thoreau and, just read a ton and, do what was calling me.
how do you think you'll survive, or how do you plan to survive given that, and given the fact that, like, if you think about the emotional greenhouse, there's things and people that are constantly throwing rocks at the greenhouse. And I guess what I'm alluding to is sort of this digital world we live. Like, we can't escape the internet, we can't escape social
Mhm.
media, we can't escape now AI. So that seems so counter to who you are. How do you, because it's almost like it's mandatory requirement for you to participate in Instagram, or I don't know, TikTok and all these things, but like that seems so counter to who you are.
Oh, I love that question. Yes, this is something that me and I think a lot of artists really wrestle with all the time. We talk about it together. The internet and social media, like, kind of kills your brain. I was thinking about that today. When I spend a lot of time on social media, when I'm posting or getting a release out, I just feel like my creativity is actually dying. Like, I feel like my brain is changing. And um, social media is proven to be toxic and change our brains and, force it into this very addictive state of being. And I I do feel I like Instagram. I like being able to be creative, and it's fun for me sometimes, but at other times it does feel very oppressive, and it feels like a duty. I know it's something that I have to do. It's something I have resisted for a long time. I've not really followed the traditional like artist path. I haven't always had my music online. I've really removed myself from digital spaces at periods, and it's been good for me, as far as my mental health, but as far as being an artist with a zillion followers, it wasn't maybe the right decision, but um, yeah, it's the depressing time with AI. I just feel creativity is sacred, and it's something, like I said, that really is a nurturing process over time that really starts when we're young and evolves as we get older. And I think all of this kind of digital junk is really stunting growth for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think as humans, we have to find all the outlets we can to balance it out and get
Yeah.
away. Um, but see that it has brought a lot of great connections into my life that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So I do thank social media for a lot of that, but I think we're at a very
Mm.
precarious moment where we have to be careful with like protecting our creativity and our critical thinking versus this kind of like inevitable doom that really seems to be AI and all of it. So
Mm. Well, I think I know we've emailed quite a bit. I think I told you about the survey I just did, but one of the findings, which I thought was pretty fascinating, is I think a lot of independent artists are advised pretty heavily to post and create content all the time. But based on the survey of about 600 people, social media is not the channel to find your most valuable fans. So it's funny because a lot of your peers are saying, well, I hate creating content, but I have to do it. I have to do it to build my base. The reality is the people that actually spend the money and actually are considered super fans, they don't find their favorite artist through social media,
That's
which I think is
interesting.
pretty interesting.
That is
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think at some point it probably will phase out. That's what I think sometimes, right now, Instagram, things like that are very dominant to our lives. Things could change. And I also think a lot of younger people especially want to revert back to nature and back to like non-digital life. I remember a time where we didn't have internet, and those are like the best memories of my life. I'm sure
Yeah, I'm
you
sure.
remember that time
Yeah.
too.
So a couple other questions about some songs. So I know you're outspoken about social media. You're also outspoken about sort of the makeup industry,
Mm.
especially for obviously for women. You've got this really interesting song called "The Show," which I think you wrote during a concert that you attended. But the line that I love is it goes like this: "And the girls in the bathroom line, ruby lipstick, uptown style, safe inside of their disguise. I see a little sadness in the corner of their eyes." Listen, we're all faking it, until we make it to
Mm.
some degree. I know for like young women, the whole idea of the makeup and all that, it's a challenge.
Oh, for sure. I feel like a hypocrite answering this because I just got my makeup done. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, my skin is not what it used to be. And I've been doing, g- embracing makeup for the very first time in my life. But my entire life, yeah, my dad was really cool and kind of instilled a lot of like feminism in me from an early age. He told me that men invented razors and that I shouldn't buy into the industry and shave my legs every single day. And and kind of discouraged me from wearing makeup because it would conceal who I was. And I do think um, that was a really good message to grow up with because I was not concerned with that for most of my life, and it just wasn't part of my daily life. And makeup is good for like, being on TV and stuff, and and but yeah, the overall message, I think, yeah, really resisting those typical pressures. I was able to find a lot of other avenues for myself within writing, within music, within things that just really called to me and like my inner spirit. And yeah, I think if I ever had children, I would kind of send the same message because we are who we are, and I think to a degree, covering up a lot of who we are innately is a flawed kind of perception. Inherently it doesn't seem what we want to be doing. And it's been interesting being in LA where so much of that culture is, fed to people. I think people growing up in LA are under, you know, different pressures like kids and young women. And you can kind of see it. And I'm just really grateful that I didn't feel that growing up. And was really encouraged to just follow my passions. That song or that lyric from the show, it was written during a Suzanne Vega concert at Fairfield Theater Company in like 2015. I didn't release it until like 10 years later, but um, I think that entire song just really pokes fun at like the veneers that we hold in society. And um, yeah, it's all kind of a show sometimes. And what I really want to do in my music is get to the truths beneath a lot of the fakery and a lot of the shiny things. And my new song, Crying at Erewhon, is also very much that sort of vibe and kind of cutting through this like perfect facade to what's really going on and the realness buried in there. So,
All right. Well, you there's your segue. So
oh,
Erewhon's
yeah.
a grocery store in SoCal. I guess
Mhm.
what's that song? 'Cause it's probably one of your newer songs.
Yeah.
Why would somebody be crying at a grocery store?
Hmm. That's a good question. So Erewhon is like a grocery store chain in LA. It's very much a place that is high end, organic. People go to see and be seen. And I do love Erewhon. I'm an organic food fan, and I really can't resist Erewhon. I am the person who goes in there and wears leggings and gets a smoothie and spends a lot of money there, because it's really good. But yeah, so I PhD in breakup songs. I got dumped in September while I was walking into an Erewhon. I had just gone to a yoga class. I had a day off. I had just had a show the night before, and I got the text that I had been dumped by this man. And I was in the grocery store and I just started crying, and it was awful. It was a really devastating day. And I just said to myself, you know what? Like, I've written a lot of sad songs. I've got to turn it around. I've got to do something different with this one. So I'm in an Erewhon and I have to channel this kind of like light, perfect energy that's all around me. And in a way, like there kind of was this cushion because I'm looking around. It's like, oh, it's going to be okay. Like there's, avocado oil, seed, whatever, tortilla chips, and like strawberry probiotic supplement. It's going to be okay. It just felt like a very, like, cushiony place to be crying. I think people kinda, who were there that day probably appreciated, like, the rawness of that and just, like, the drama. It was a terrible day, I just, like, didn't expect it. I had a flight the next night, and as it was happening, I'm like, "Okay, well, this is a song, and I feel terrible right now, but I'm gonna write the song." And that might be one of my favorite songs. It's funny, it's, sarcastic, and, I think it's kind of the song you write when you're, like, so disillusioned with dating that, like, you really don't care anymore, and it's the song that comes when you're just at a place of, like, "Well, alright, like, this is what it is, I'm crying at Erewhon, let's do it," and it's very different from my other music, so I'm excited.
All right, that's awesome. Well, cool. Well, so last question. Last question, and thanks again for your time, Anna.
Oh, thank you.
Um, I wish I was where you are. It's so nice. It's
Oh,
been
this is
raining here
it's
in Atlanta for like
Oh,
2 weeks.
yeah. No, I'm really every time I'm here, I'm just like, "Wow, this is really special." Yeah, it's a cool area. Very inspiring.
Yeah. So the podcast that I do, it's a lot of things. I started
Mm,
it when I turned 50. I used to be in journalism, but I've been in the tech world for a couple decades, and I was like, you know what? Like, I want to get back and start to meet
that's so
people. I'm,
cool.
I'm curious about musicians and all
Yeah.
that. So I think curiosity is a really important part of life that's often overlooked. So I want to ask you, like, in your 30s now, with the music that you're making and your interesting sort of, you know, run to date, I guess, what are you most curious about?
Yeah, I think I'm
Yeah,
curious about, um, honestly, on a bigger picture kind of idea, like how the world is gonna end up, in the near future. I think it's an interesting time, to be alive, and I think that I'm curious how art and music is going to really feed into, like, transforming the current moment and just bringing us to, like, a better, healthier, more sustainable place. Because I think we're in a moment of a lot of fear and anxiety, and, I think in past generations, music and art has always kind of taken the driver's seat and the role of like, feeding people when they are desperate. I look around me like there's such an energy in Marin. You think of people like Jefferson Airplane and all of the great bands of the 60s that kind of used like this area as their kind of nesting place and really emerged with a lot of great music. So I feel inspired and I think I'm curious to see how like we're gonna come out of this digital within the digital framework, how are like the leaders and the speakers and the singers and the healers going to really emerge? And I think it's starting to happen, but I'd like to see a bigger movement. And then just from like a personal standpoint, I think I'm curious to see where like my current trajectory is going to take me because it um, feels different, for me. I feel like out of my comfort zone, which is a really good thing, in music and in life. And there's a lot of big things, I think when you are in your 30s, mid 30s, things start moving quicker and a lot of big things are happening. And so I'm just curious how I'm gonna come out of these next few years. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Well, keep making music because it's important.
Thank you. It is
Um,
important.
yeah. And, hopefully there will be many more degrees and breakup songs. PhD's
I
enough.
don't know.
And,
I mean, honest, I always say like
double-
my songs are better than the relationships themselves. So
there
I
you
wouldn't
go.
be opposed
Well,
to it. I'm
well, good. Well, enjoy the rest of 2026, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for having
All
me.
right. Thank you.